Dr. George Blair West, and if you found me, chances are you're like most of my patients who are looking for something very different, much more powerful when it comes to losing weight. And you might also be somebody who's worked out that when it comes to losing weight, it is first and foremost a mind game. Yes, it's about what's in your mind, not what's in your mouth. And if you're like most of my patients, you're looking for something that takes you a bit deeper, that deals with the complexities that so often sit behind this very challenging task that most of us take on of trying to lose weight. So, what are we going to cover in this video? Well, I want to introduce you to my world, which is the psychology of weight loss. I'm guessing you will probably want to know a bit about myself and my clinical experience and how and why I'm qualified to talk about this. I'm going to give you some of the tips that have come from my work in this space, some of the things that you must be doing if you're going to successfully lose weight and keep it off, because keeping it off is one of my key focuses, because I believe it's such a tragedy when we successfully lose weight and then we put it all back on again. So that's one of my big focuses. And then I'm going to finish up by telling you about what's got me excited about the future and the work that I'm doing in that space, which you may be interested in coming along on that journey with me. But before we go any further, there is one thing I need to say to you, and that is, if you're somebody who's looking for, a quick way to lose weight, somebody who's going to tell you exactly to do A, B, and C, and give you recipes and all that kind of stuff, then I'm sorry, but you're in the wrong place. You need to go off to one of the many websites that will promise that and spend some time over there. The kind of people who are interested in my work, well, you will be interested in personal growth, you'll be interested in how your mind works, you'll be interested in going a little bit deeper, because you see, so often our problems with overeating are a symptom of something else. And if we don't understand that, then we can put an enormous amount of sweat and money and time into losing weight. And if we're lucky enough to actually get it off, which is difficult if we haven't dealt with these other issues, then we're very likely to put it back on again. So I guess this site is for thinking people who have probably tried to lose weight, well, more than once, shall we say. Most of my patients have tried, they've tried dozens of different things over decades, and then they come to me to do something very differently. So that's the kind of work I do, and if that's you, then you're absolutely in the right place. Okay, so why should you be interested in what I have to say? Well, I started life out as a medical doctor, which means I have a pretty good understanding of the physiology and the medical aspects of losing weight. And then I specialised in psychiatry. Within psychiatry, I went into psychotherapy, which is all about dealing with the deeper aspects of our mind, but more importantly, about bringing about a fundamental change in the way we think and the way we behave that stays with us for the long term. And then over a decade or so ago now, I started working with people in the psychotherapy of weight loss. And of course, I ended up in this space because I had to lose weight. And I did this over a period of some months. I then went away on an overseas holiday. We ended up in Switzerland, where, for those of you who have been there know they love dipping stuff. And so the main course is dipped in hot fondue cheese type stuff. And just for good measure, when it comes to dessert, they just dip everything in chocolate, like the entire kitchen. And so I came back very cleverly, having put on not just all of the weight that I'd lost, but a little bit more for good measure. And it was then that I realised that there was something desperately wrong with this whole way of losing weight. And I realised I'd also approached it wearing my hat as a medical doctor and not my hat as a psychotherapist. And that got me thinking. So then I started going to the literature. What literature did I go to? Well, it was actually the addiction research. And it was there that I started to think very differently about the whole approach that the medical profession, and that includes dietitians and so on, have taken to losing weight. And that led to my first book, which some of you may know of, Weight Loss for Food Lovers. Now, if I was going to summarise, well, at least one of the key points in this book, well, it's actually represented by this image on the cover of the book, which I like kind of using these things to help us remember these kinds of points. And by the way, thanks to Rhett Naxon from Hay House in Australia, who designed the cover of this book and came up with this brilliant idea that I think is a lovely way of capturing what it is that I want to talk about here. So these hearts, I'm not sure if you can see that, but these two hearts are made of strawberries. Now, strawberries for me represent healthy food that tastes good. Okay, healthy food that tastes good. So one of the things that is very important if we're going to successfully lose weight by developing what I call a new healthy eating lifestyle is we have to eat healthy food that we still enjoy. Very, very important point. If you're eating cabbage soup, well, it's fine if you love cabbage soup, but if you don't, then you're wasting your time because it's not sustainable. And then in the second heart here, we've got some rich Belgian couverture chocolate. Now, you probably can't tell that from there, but trust me, it is. And of course, that represents the importance of the decadent food that we must have in our new healthy eating lifestyle. If we don't have some decadent food, and of course, it's not chocolate or sweet things for everybody. For other people, it might be cheeses and other savoury items, red wine. It's really important that we work out how to integrate that as part of a healthy eating lifestyle. And the third part that Rhett sort of captured really nicely here are the hearts, because the hearts represent the relationship we want to have with food that we love. Because so often when people come to see me, they feel controlled by food, particularly people who binge. They feel completely out of control when they're around certain foods. So it's absolutely critical that we shift our relationship to food so that we develop a loving relationship that is respectful and, of course, healthy. So that was, in fact, this book changed many things for me. It became a bestseller here in Australia. It then got translated into some other languages. In fact, just a word to those of you who are interested in writing or publishing, take a bit more interest than I did in the covers of the other books that your book gets translated into. This is the Chinese version of the book, and I never really took the time to explain to them what we're trying to get at here. So we have a heart, but we have some Coca-Cola here. We have some, so we've got, this is like a cross between a pizza and a cake. I'm not really sure what that is. I'm guessing it's a pizza or a pake. I have no idea. And then they've got some mushrooms, which I guess is Chinese healthy food. But then they've got this tape measure strangling the heart, which was not at all the kind of image that I wanted to portray. When it got translated into Dutch, things got even worse. I don't know if you can see that, but this is fried chicken. This is tomato sauce, or for you American folk, ketchup and sour cream. And of course, there's no healthy food anywhere to be seen. So, of course, that's a little bit problematic. Okay, but the book that I'm actually most proud about is this one. It's a children's book, and I wrote it with my lovely wife, Penny. She's a psychologist. And in writing this book, we wanted to deal with another issue. So we've already spoken about the importance of healthy foods must be tasty for us. We've got to have some decadent foods in our life. We've got to change our relationship to food so it looks more like a loving relationship rather than being controlled by food. And then we need to eat food very mindfully. Now, of course, this is something that we need to teach our children. But with this book, we went a step further. And in chapter 1 here, what you see is his mum with 2 kids. And what they're eating is chocolate. And this is a big lolly python thingy. And of course, what we wanted to deal with here was this bind that we put children in that leaves them very confused about these foods, and of course gives these foods a lot of power. When on one hand we give them the message that these foods are in some way bad, if I can use that word, but there's variations on that message, that these are bad, unhealthy foods. But whenever they go to the biggest events of their childhood lives, which are, well, their own birthday party and their friends' birthday parties, what foods are front and centre? Well, it's the chocolate and the chips and the crisps and everything else. So we need our children to develop a healthy relationship to these foods, and most of all to make sure they really enjoy them so that they don't need to eat so much of them. That's the critical point about eating mindfully, is that if we're going to eat less, that is very difficult to do if we aren't very good at extracting the most psychological pleasure we can from smaller amounts of food. And the other thing we did here was we wrote a song. Now, we like the song too, but I guess it's kind of like your own babies. They all look good to you. Just to remind children and the parents in the room that when we eat these, particularly these more decadent foods, that we eat them with full focus, full mindfulness, all of our senses brought to bear, and no distractions, particularly television and computers and games, electronic games and screens and all the different variations that we have on that in this day and age.
Taste with your face, cause your tummy doesn't know. If you really, really love it, you'll taste it really slow. Taste it with your eyes as you look it up and down. See the colors and the shapes as you're turning it around. Taste it with your nose, smell it really, really well. Do you wonder how it tastes? Can you?
Okay, so that's where I've been, but if you want to ask me a better question, and I'm very big on asking the right question, then say, George, where are you going now? And I would say to you, well, the thing that has become really clear to me from working in this space is that if we're going to lose weight and keep it off successfully, then we've got to deal with this rather complex and poorly understood animal called motivation. And once you start thinking about motivation, you come to what motivation is built on top of, which is your mindset. Okay, now let me just explain those two a little bit. See, your mindset is what you bring to the game. Imagine an Olympian rocking up to the Olympics without having done any preparation beforehand. And most importantly, without having done the mental preparation beforehand. Now, I've actually treated several Olympians, and I can tell you that what determines who wins, who gets the gold, who becomes what they then call an Olympic champion, is their mindset. They're all beautifully honed physical specimens who are very, very good at what they do. And the differences, the hundredths of a second difference, so often come down to the individual's mindset. And so we have to have that right before we start. And what I've realized is that most people start their journey to lose weight without doing any of that work. And so when the problems start to come along and their mind reacts to the challenge of losing weight, as it always does, they're completely ill-prepared for what happens. And then the second issue is this thing called motivation. And one of the first things that I realized as I started to delve into this space is that motivation is made up of two parts. It's got a yin and a yang. See, on one side, or on one level, we have this conscious desire to lose weight. But then we also have a competing desire, conscious or unconscious, to enjoy the food or to get the benefits that come from eating food. You know, my wife actually found a quote that really captures this in a lovely way. She found it on the internet, and it goes like this. It says, "Inside me is this beautiful, slim woman just trying to get out. But I can usually shut the bitch up with chocolate brownies." Now, I love that because it absolutely captures this complexity with motivation. You have, at one level, this desire to be slim and more attractive, but then at another level, you have this need, stroke, desire to eat the foods that you love. And so motivation is actually a more complex animal than most people appreciate. And it's understanding that, and then with that understanding, bringing it under our control so that we can maintain our motivation. That's what's been fascinating me lately. And then the other thing that I've been, and this has kind of troubled me for a long time, it's actually quite difficult to, when you do the kind of work that I do, to actually help very many people. You know, I only have the time these days to see, a few dozen patients each week. And there's some really interesting stuff that we're doing in that therapy that I'd love to be sharing with more people. And with technology, as it's evolved, I now have the opportunity to do that. Not only can we share it with many more people, but we can make it a lot less expensive. Because actually to see me, well, my books are actually closed at the moment, but to see me, it's going to cost you more than $300 for a 45-minute session, and then you'll get some money back depending on your different Medicare rebates. And of course, I need to spend some hours with people, so as you can imagine, that gets expensive fairly quickly. But what we've managed to put together here is, using some cool technology, the opportunity for you to eavesdrop on my therapy with my patients. Now, of course, it's not without their knowledge. I've got some wonderful patients who have very generously agreed to help me out with this. And so they have given of their time. And I've picked my more articulate and psychologically minded patients. And what we're doing is we're recording our therapy sessions, and we're letting you listen in to some of the more powerful and interesting elements and moments in those sessions. And I'm going to put them up in this program so that you guys can come in each week and have a listen to them. And we've been able to price that at a level that I think you'll be pretty pleased with. It's a fraction of what it would cost to see me individually. And I'm pretty excited about that, because I actually don't think there's any other therapists, particularly any other psychiatrists who've got the medical background and so on, that are doing anything like this. So I think it's going to be pretty cool, and that might be something that you're interested in. So that's where I'm going at the moment. I'm developing this crash course on motivation and mindset, and I am offering this eavesdropping, as I said, with patients' permission, of course, which I'm very thankful that they agree to do this. Now, if that sort of thing is of interest to you, if this space that you've heard me now talking about is of interest to you, then please come with me on this journey. Otherwise, I hope that you found this of interest. Hopefully it's got you thinking about this very challenging exercise of losing weight in a slightly different way. But either way, I wish you all the best on your journey. I'm Dr. George Blair West, and bye for now. Thank you.